What's up, guys? Adam here, Car Studio 72 in the Car Center of Excellence, KCE, my garage. Coming to you today about a few things for 2025 that I've done to my car to do some more track stuff and autocross. Don't forget, like and subscribe, please. I've got quite a bit of, my subscriber number's gone up and my watch hours still need to get there to monetize. So it'd be great. I do put, a decent amount of time into making, I think, useful videos, even though they're somewhat low quality compared to a lot of YouTubers, but whatever. Okay, so two things to talk about today is Mark 8 PCV full retrofit with a Radium Engineering catch can. That's going to be an interesting thing to talk about. And I got new tires for the track. So for my track wheels, these are my Apex 17x9 VS5RS forged wheels. So these are the really light, strong wheels. They weigh like 17 pounds a piece. So I've done some videos about the Nexen and Farah Sport Rs that I had after the last event at VIR with the Tidewater Sports Car Club. They were hosed. They were getting, the outer edge was pretty lumpy. I was developing some areas where the outer rubber was completely worn through. The cords weren't showing, but it was time. So I got 15 days out of those tires, and I really like them. And when I went to buy them again from the supplier I've bought from in the past, True Performance Motorsport out in California, they didn't have any more in that size. They only had two, and he wasn't going to have any anytime soon from wherever they come from. So rather than replace the Nexens with another pair, I went ahead and tried the kind of somewhat, I guess, at one point controversial and now pointy end of the stick 200 treadwear tire called the Vitour Tempesta P1. So these are rated as the fastest 200 treadwear tire according to the Grassroots Motorsports Bible of 200 treadwear tires, which I'll link in the description. The couple links to the tests and the kind of table people look at that shows the ranking of these tires. But I went same size, 245 4017. You can run a 255 4017. These are 24.7 inches total diameter, which is a little smaller. The factory size on these cars was, I think it came with a 16-inch wheel and like a 205 55 or something like that. It's more like 25 inches tall. And then if you run, I run a 235 4018, which is actually 25.4. So there are some differences in the speedometer and effectively the final gearing of the car based on these different tire sizes. So these are kind of cool because they're a little smaller, so they a little shorter, so they get the car a little lower. And they also effectively improve the low-end gearing, which these cars suffer from. The Sportwagons have kind of a lethargic econo gear DSG versus, let's say, the R that has much tighter performance-oriented gear ratios. So, and it's one thing I notice on the track is punching out of turns in third gear. Sometimes you just don't have a lot of guts to it at the RPMs, but you don't want to shift to second because then the RPMs just peg and you're there for just, a few seconds before a shift. It's almost not worth it. So running a slightly smaller tire does help, and of course then it also probably reduces the top end speed slightly. Anyway, so these are these Vitour Tempesta P1s. I've scrubbed them in just a kind of like a drive on the street, some hard braking from highway speed down to low speed, and some cloverleaf, trying to drive through cloverleafs as fast as I could, basically to try to get that mold release junk off so I can use them. I'm going to try them this weekend at an autocross and see if I can suck less than I have in the last three I've done. But these are supposed to be really great tires. We'll see. They were actually fine on the street because they're new, so the tread's nice and, they're not lumpy and chunked like my other ones, so you could drive these on the street. They were you could tell they were firmer, effectively kind of like having a higher spring rate because the rubber, the sidewalls are so stiff. But yeah, I think these are going to be cool. Just a quick thing about I mentioned that these were somewhat controversial. When these came out, there was a lot of drama if you're into the Sports Car Club of America, SECA, like big time nerd about autocross or something. These were actually outlawed for a couple reasons. And so those reasons have been rectified, and now these are competition legal 200 treadwear street tires. But I actually got two different sets, which is kind of interesting. So the date code on two of mine was what's that say, 4623, so 46th week of 2023. And these earlier run tires have, for competition use, molded on the inner sidewall. And so I guess some people had some drama with that technically by the SCCA rule book, you couldn't have tires. They have to be street tires, and this voided them and all this other nonsense. Whatever, I'm just doing local stuff, and they're accepted now anyway. But I have two of these slightly older run and two that are, I think they're 924, so they're slightly newer. Either way, they're just about a year old, and they're fine. I can't imagine that there's any issues. Some people get really particular about date codes and how they were stored. Look, I'm not any good at any of this. I'm just having fun. I think they're going to be fine. So anyway, the Vitour Tempesta P1 are on the car for, I imagine I'll keep them. They'll probably be okay for a couple years for my use, a couple autocrosses a year and a couple HPDEs. But I'm excited to try them because there was a lot of hubbub about it. Okay, next up is, I put a catch can on my car. Now, I've been kind of anti-catch can, I guess, because realistically, you don't really need one. And I have the Mark 8 PCV with the Venturi setup and all that, and I don't have smoking issues on the track. So I just wanted, this is actually for a Mark 8. And the Radium Engineering design has, on a Mark 8, it would sit over here. On my car, Mark 7, it doesn't really, there's just not enough room. The factory box, I think the airbox starts probably more even with the battery, which would open up a little more room. But effectively, this is supposed to be sitting over here, and the lines would run under the intake and to the PCV and the turbo inlet. But I figured out a way to run it on the Mark 7. It's actually really simple. I bolted one corner here to the factory mount bolt, and I drilled one hole in this kind of brace that sits on top of the headlight, and just put a screw and a bolt through it, and it works. That's fine. It's no issue. And actually, yeah, I can even take the can off. It doesn't interfere with that AC line. So that's pretty cool. So it's a nice little spot for it. And if you look at Mark 7, most of the catch cans sit over here because there's just more room. There are, I think, a few that might sit over on this side, but I think almost all of them go this way. So that's what I did, and it worked. So I bought the Mark 8 PCV, or sorry, yeah, the Mark 8 catch can kit from Radium. I ordered some, I wanted one bracket, so I ordered these off Amazon. They're the Evil Energy brand. They sell lots of like little brackets and exhaust bits. And then that's it. So it's a really simple install. I did that. Oh, and I had a bend. I think this kind of piece here, I had to slightly bend it up to get this to sit correctly and not be at a funky, it was putting pressure on things because it wasn't quite at the right angle. Anyway, so I had one bend here, just bend it in a vise, and then this mounting bolt here, one hole. So, okay, Mark 8 PCV that I've done videos on, Data-Driven MQB's channel has a immense amount of information, all this. But what I ended up doing was this catch can, which just, it basically comes with quick connects. It's so easy. So you unplug or you unclick the connector that's coming from the turbo inlet to the PCV, and you click it into the one hose, and then this hose has a fitting that plugs into the back of the Mark 8 PCV. That's it. So you're just putting a can in line on the turbo inlet route. And so far, after like a couple weeks, you can see it actually has a little dipstick, which is kind of neat. I think some of the other ones do this. I have nothing. It's bone dry. And that makes sense. There shouldn't really be anything going this way. Under wide open throttle, the vacuum source for the crankcase, the PCV, is coming from air going through the turbo inlet, past the orifice, and also from this Venturi hose coming off the hot, or the hot side, the charged, the high pressure side of the turbo, filtering some charge air past the Venturi here. So you're getting this kind of vacuum being drawn on the PCV, but that's only under wide open throttle, remember. When you're just cruising around or at idle, low RPM, low throttle, the PCV is generating vacuum through the intake valves through an internal route in the block. And then when you get on it, this diaphragm closes and the vacuum is drawn from this route. And driving around town, I'm not like punching it all the time or really doing anything, so that makes sense why there's nothing in it. The way the PCV works, basically there's an air oil separator in it, so when you're driving around, any oil laden fumes that are coming up through the PCV, the oil goes out, there's an air oil separator and drains back to the block. So you're not getting any oil really through this route except for probably a fine mist. I mean, you can open up my charge pipes and hoses and there's going to be a little oily residue, which is pretty normal. But I was curious after the last track day where I'm losing, I don't know, a quarter to a third, a quart of oil a day on the track, just probably totally normal. But I was curious if I put this in line, would I actually catch that instead of potentially putting some of that oil back to the intake system just as a cleanliness thing. I have a feeling some of that oil is just being burnt the kind of traditional way. It's just getting past the rings and, the crankcase is under pressure and you're getting some blow by and you're getting some oil pushed up past the oil ring, the piston rings and up into the combustion chamber. But we'll see next time. We'll see actually this weekend. I'm going to do an autocross, and autocross is... We'll put potentially some oil in here. So I'm kind of curious how it works, but it's really a pretty slick little setup. So, yeah, kind of a super haggard together PCV. So Mark 8 PCV, Tiguan Venturi hose setup, and then Radium Engineering Mark 8 catch can on a Mark 7. So that's kind of fun, little mod to do. See if it actually does anything. Again, any oil I can keep out of, just putting oil in your intercooler seems like a good idea, but that's probably not where most of the oil is going when I'm losing it on the track. A lot of people seem to think that running a catch can is necessary because that you want to keep the oil off of the, through the intake and off the back of your valves. But in fact, that's not where most of the oil, the buildup on your back of your valves in a direct injection engine is really actually coming from the oil that gets passed and back down onto the intake valves through the block path. Probably not much is going through here, but, the aftermarket likes to sell you things you don't need necessarily. So we'll see. It's easy enough to reverse it and sell it if I don't want it. Anyway, that's it. So Vitour Tempesta P1, going to give him a shot, and Radium Engineering Mark 8 catch can on a Mark 7 with a Mark 8 PCV full retrofit Venturi Tiguan hose. All right. Peace.